now, so you're all aware. Just a quick introduction on James and Amy. They've been very busy people. They've got a lot going on, so I thought I'd give you a little flavour of some of the things that they are busy with. Amy, I'm not really sure where she's found the time to talk to us today. Her email signature goes on with all the things she's doing. So I think she's currently on a placement doing her BSc Wildlife Ecology and Conservation Science, doing some work at Bristol Zoological Society with the conservation campaigns as a placement student. She's a summer research intern. I think she's just finished at the Eden Project. And while she's been busy with all of that, she's been getting a list of accolades as well. So she's UWE Student Union Welfare Volunteer of the Year, 2018. The Eden Ravenscroft Outstanding Personal Achievement Award winner, 2018. The National Student Fundraising Award 2018 Campaign of the Year, highly commended. And last but obviously not least, she is our very own EAUC Green Gown Award Student Sustainability Champion of the Year. So amazing work there, Amy. We'll have to keep an eye on you. James Longhurst is a Professor of Environmental Science and the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Environment and Sustainability at UWE Bristol. It's quite a mouthful. Alongside that, he is also the Executive Director of the Air Quality Management Resource Centre, which provides executive leadership for the WHO, World Health Organization, Collaborating Centre on Healthy Urban Environments. While he's busy with that, he also leads the Knowledge Exchange for Education Initiative at UWE. James was instrumental in taking Amy's research and making sure that it became part of the university's policy. So once Amy has finished talking to us about palm oil, we will talk to him about what he did with that and how they worked together to put that into policy. Just so we know how the format will work, we're going to hold questions for afterwards. If you have any questions that you want to ask during the presentation, just use the chat box, if you're familiar with it, down the bottom of your screen. Send a message, probably just to me, so that's Claire Delamotte, or EAUC. If you are happy to just ask the question yourself during the Q&A, just let me know that you have a question. If you don't have a microphone or you prefer me to read it out, if you just type the question out into the chat box, and I will go through those once we get to the Q&A. Obviously, if you are happy to ask the question live, I will just let you know when that opportunity comes, and make sure that you introduce yourself and unmute yourself. So I'm going to hand straight over to the lovely Amy now to talk to us about palm oil.
Can you all see my slides? Can you see my slides?
Yeah, that was great.
Right, so hello everybody, it's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank Ian Patton for the invitation to come today, and for Jim and Claire as well for sort of helping set this up. I'm currently the Acting Green Tea Coordinator for the Students' Union at UWE, and I'm here to talk to you guys today about the true story of palm oil. So I wanted to give you guys a bit of a background. So what actually is palm oil? Well, it's derived from the African oil palm fruit. And you can get two different types of oil from this fruit. So you can get it either from the flesh, in this cup, and you can also get it from the seed or kernel. And this has contributed significantly to its versatility. So it can be used in over 50% of all European supermarket products. So this includes detergents, this includes food, this includes feed, and cosmetics as well. And it's currently thriving in the tropical climate of Malaysia and Indonesia. It's, as the name suggests, native to Africa. However, that's sort of within 10 degrees of the equator, and those areas are subject to long periods of drought, which can actually dramatically decrease yield. So as a result of Malaysia's constant rainfall and maintained high temperatures, it's thrived in that climate, and Malaysia and Indonesia have, as a result, emerged as major producers of this crop.
Amy, can I just stop you for just a second? I just want to check everyone can hear you. I think somebody suggested that if you can't hear Amy, if you could dial in.
How do I dial in?
No, don't worry about you. Just everyone else can dial in. I can hear you fine. So it may just be some people who are having a little trouble with the sound on their computers. So just give it a second.
That's okay. Would you like me to start again?
No, I think you're okay. If you could speak up, that'd be great.
I'll sit a bit closer to the microphone as well. Pardon? Okay, so further to what I was saying with regards to Malaysia and Indonesia emerging as these massive producers of palm oil. So the cultivation of palm oil actually was quite slow. It started back in 1917. It's only sort of within the last 50 years really that sort of as a result of large investments that it's kind of accelerated in the way it has. So between 2000 and 2012, production has increased about 50% in Malaysia, and it's actually tripled in Indonesia. And in a separate study between 1990 and 2005, it was found that 56 of this was planted at the expense of primary rainforest, which, as this picture shows, one of the most prolific problems associated with palm oil is deforestation. Now, what can deforestation cause? Well, it can cause soil erosion, it can cause water and air pollution, it can cause increased house gas emissions, biodiversity loss, habitat loss and fragmentation, etc., etc. But this also can result in increased risk of subsidence and forest fires. So generally got a pretty bad reputation, and that's just the environmental impact. That's not even considering the impact of the local people and their sort of labour rights and things like that. So why don't we just boycott palm oil? Well, this graph is showing data collected as the most recent global yield per hectare. So it's like a global average from the FAO in 2016. These do change slightly year on year, but this is a sort of a pretty standard setup. So if you look at the different bars here, so palm oil will produce 9 times the amount of groundnut oil, approximately 7 times the amount of rapeseed, and around 3 times the amount of coconut. So if we were to switch to, in this case, like the next best thing, that would be coconut, we would need 3 times the amount of land to gain the same amount of product, which obviously would cause 3 times the amount of destruction that palm oil is currently. Further to this, so palm oil is actually a perennial crop, unlike rapeseed or soybeans, so it's a lot cheaper to produce for the farmers, and as a result of that, it's been classed as a very important contributor to poverty alleviation, and has sort of been considered as sort of a good source of investment for Malaysian and Indonesian governments. It's helped to lift a lot of people out of poverty, so it's not quite so simple as let's just get rid. You may have seen in the news recently the Iceland advert, which I'm going to show you now. Hopefully this will play. Oh, there's no sound. Claire?
Yeah.
Can you hear the sound on this?
No. Shall I try it on mine?
Yeah. Would you mind? Sorry.
It's okay.
Going so well. I need to stop sharing for that to happen.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, sorry, let me share that rather than just play it. Give me a second. Okay.
Maybe it was just.
I see subtitles. Good night.
Okay, Amy, do you want to start your slides again or start sharing again?
Yeah, can you see my slides?
No. I think you need to share it again.
Okay. Can you see me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So Iceland were the first major supermarket to commit to banning all palm oil within their own brand products by the end of 2018. And for the reasons that I've previously mentioned, this isn't something that's necessarily a good idea, in my opinion. But this advert was initially put together by Greenpeace, and it's Greenpeace do actually support sustainable palm oil. So what they refer to as dirty palm oil is actually unsustainable palm oil. It's just quite misleading. And as a result, Iceland have sort of tried to use it for their Christmas advert, and it sparked a lot of controversy because it can't be televised. Something to do with Greenpeace being classed as politically charged in some way. But it's caused a lot of people to sort of share it on Facebook and things and suggest that we should ban all palm oil. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. So this is a prime example of that. So because of all of this misinformation, those companies that are actually using sustainable palm oil are afraid to label it as such because they don't want to draw attention to the fact that they are actually using palm oil. So Nutella, for instance, they use sustainable palm oil, or you have it on the other end of the spectrum where Meridian, who don't actually use any palm oil within their sort of range of butters, they kind of use that as a marketing technique to, you know, suggest that no palm oil is good, which is obviously quite confusing to your sort of average consumer. So I'd like to mention at this point that it's not palm oil itself that's the issue, it's how it's produced and the way in which it's produced. So as a collaboration between the WWF, who are sort of campaigning against unsustainable palm oil plantation expansion, and the necessity of businesses to, you know, to ensure their longevity of the palm oil industry, to carry on using it within their products, they needed to adopt a sort of sustainable method of doing so. So WWF teamed up with Unilever back in 2004 to create the Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil. Now this kind of joins together, if you like, the production in the south with the consumption in the north. And at every stage of the supply chain, if a company would like to use the RSPO logo, which is on the slide there, on their sort of product, they need, at every stage of the supply chain, if they've got legal ownership or if they physically handled the palm oil, it needs to abide by a set of strict criteria, which I'm going to sort of touch on briefly for you now. Now this was developed over a year and it's updated every 5 years. So the last time it was updated was in 2013. So at the moment they're actually currently rewriting the criteria to make sure that it is as impactful and still kind of does the job that it's set out to do. So the first point on the criteria is a commitment to transparency. So through this, they need to have publicly available management documents. They also need to demonstrate that they're sort of trying to continuously improve. The second point on the criteria is compliance with applicable laws and regulations. So this includes all laws, local, national, international. It can include anything from the labour rights laws of workers to the IUCN Red List for endangered species. So they need to be sort of demonstrating, if you like, that they're committed to long-term economic and financial viability. So they really need to show within their business management documents that they are thinking in the long term, and as sort of as part of this, they need to show a 5-year replanting forecast. Number 4, use of appropriate best practices by growers and millers. So they need to show that they are sort of thinking about things like soil erosion, so they can't plant on really sort of steep areas. They also need to think about maintaining soil fertility and reducing, improving water quality. They also need to be shown that they're effectively managing their pests, but any kind of agrochemical use they need to justify and also have means in place to reduce those. So lots of things with that one as well. This one is kind of similar. So this one is environmental responsibility and conservation of natural resources and biodiversity. So any kind of new plantation, they need to have, or current plantations as well actually, they need to have a full environmental impact assessment. So if, say for instance, they wanted to build a new road, they would need to kind of measure that impact on the biodiversity that's currently there. This one's quite similar to number 5, however this is more kind of related to people. So this ensures that the growers and employees within this industry get a fair price for their product. They also have rights, so they're not going to be mistreated in the workplace, but also positive impacts as well. So if the money from this generated could be used to build a new school, for instance, or improve transport links. And then finally, they have to show responsible development of new plantings. So this involves, they can't plant on areas of high conservation value. So primary rainforest cannot be cut down for a new plantation, and they cannot use things like fire to clear an area of land. Okay. So how does UWE fit into all of this? Well, I'm currently part of Elwood Lab, which is a research group, and they're studying the Asplenium nidus, or the bird's nest tree fern, and its potential to improve biodiversity in logged forest for palm oil plantations. Now, the bird's nest tree fern is an epiphyte, and it derives from the Greek word epi, which means upon, and phyton, which means plant. So they just kind of sit within the rainforest canopy. So how does this relate to palm oil? Well, as I mentioned, they do sit within the rainforest canopy, so they are kind of litter baskets, if you like, really. They intercept leaves as they fall and sort of decompose those and sort of turn that into a nutrient source. And if you actually were to cut open a bird's nest fern, they're home to like the skinks and geckos, which you can see on the screen now, but also lots of arthropods, so centipedes, termites, all those lovely things. This is actual footage from the microscope images from the bird's nest tree fern that was collected out in Borneo. And this pie chart here just kind of shows you how much the bird's nest tree fern is responsible for the diversity within tree crowns. So they're quite similar. So if you were to take the bird's nest fern out, most of the biodiversity would be contained in that. They're kind of like little islands, if you like. And even more species are supported. So this is in a sort of a rainforest environment. This isn't in a plantation. So orangutans have actually been shown to use bird's nest tree ferns to put their young in, and they can sit them in there while they go and fruit pick. So what the plan is, what Fern and my research supervisor would like to do is take a few ferns out of the rainforest canopy. These regenerate very quickly. It doesn't, as they are an epiphyte, it won't damage the tree or the plant itself. They're quite portable, well, as portable as a 200-kilogram plant can be, and put them into palm oil plantations. Because many of the species that's supported, they sort of find, they sort of stay in there because it's nice and cool in there. It provides sort of shelter, if you like, from the heat of the rainforest. And this research is actually being put forward to a Research Excellence Framework, or REF Impact case study. And as part of that, Fern has been he's actually built a palm oil exhibit at the Eden Project. Now this, pictures are there, and this is actually in the tropical rainforest biome. And this seeks to educate the general public about You can see the different yield tubes there to sort of show how much palm oil you can get in comparison to other oils. It also shows like the scale of the problem worldwide, but also what they can do in terms of buying products with sustainable palm oil in, and also, of course, the Bird's Nest Tree Fern project. And as sort of an aside to that, so I spent my summer working at the Eden Project as a research intern, and I was looking into how that exhibit could influence behaviour change. The lessons from that will be hopefully going towards the UWE palm oil exhibit. This is currently being built in X-Block, and this is as a result of a collaboration between Fern, who's from the Faculty of Health and Applied Sciences, and James Lee, who's from the Arts, Creative Industries and Education Department. So it's like a cross-departmental thing. The exhibit itself hasn't been, this is sort of at its current stage, it hasn't been finished, it's not finished building yet. But we're hoping that this will be able to encourage the community to further consider their consumer choices and how that can impact the rest of the planet. And just as an aside, I'm currently a placement student with Bristol Zoo. They've got their Supporting Sustainable Palm Oil campaign, and as part of that, I'm researching into local businesses in Bristol to kind of provide a support and a framework to encourage them to switch to RSPO certified palm oil. And yeah, we'll be hopefully providing them with the sort of means to do that. So we'll be teaming up with Bristol Zoo to help lead this working group, which I will come to in a second. So Malaysia from London is actually approximately about 6,500 miles away. So it's not too difficult to understand why so many people are, maybe not in recent news, but are pretty disengaged with how they specifically impact the rest of the planet with their sort of everyday actions. And that was something I really wanted to change. I was sustainability officer for the Students' Union last year, and that was sort of my goal, if you like, to make it easier for students to make environmentally conscious choices. So back in October 2017, I successfully ran a campaign with the Students' Union to get them to commit to stocking any RSPO certified palm oil products in their shops. And then this allowed me to hold UWE to account at one of our sustainability board meetings about sort of what their stance on palm oil was, which led to the development of a sustainable palm oil policy, which Jim will touch further on in a moment. But we also didn't stop there. We also wrote a letter to CHUCO, as sort of a leading catering body, to ask them sort of how they were engaging with this issue. And here is their response. I won't expect you to read the whole letter, but their kind of key messages from that is they'd like to amend their tender template documents to sort of ask a question about whether that organisation has a palm oil policy. They also want to amend Procure Wizard to identify products that contain palm oil and whether that's RSPO certified. So in short, it will make it a lot easier for higher education institutions and other bodies that are affiliated with CHUCO to make those right choices and to choose RSPO certified palm oil products. So this is sort of my last bit from me. So I would like to challenge you all today to write a letter to CHUCO to show your support for these proposed initiatives, because in my opinion the best way to ensure that they follow up their words with actions is for lots of different organisations to show them that they would like that to be put in place. But I mentioned a working group. Thus far I've collected around 13 pledges from different universities and higher education institutions. And basically I would like to work with Bristol Zoo to provide that framework to encourage other universities to adopt a sustainable palm oil policy or incorporate it within their strategic plans. So I can send this link on afterwards, but if any of you would like to take the pledge and to join the working group, you can follow it through there. And this is where I'll hand over to Jim, who's going to tell you more in depth about our palm oil policy that we have here. But yeah, thank you for listening to me.
Okay, well, Amy, thank you very much for that very comprehensive overview. So just checking you can hear me okay, Claire? Yeah?
I can hear you, Jim. That should be okay. I mean, obviously, just keep your voice up if you can, please.
Yeah, I've never been told I have a quiet voice. So, why would a university be concerned about palm oil? Well, it comes as a consequence of the university community being concerned about it. You've heard from Amy that the student union took a particular position. You heard that we have researchers engaged in world-leading research in Southeast Asia exploring biodiversity. And we have colleagues in the Faculty of Arts and Creative Industries who are concerned enough about this to want to actually engage in the development of a resource so that the whole university community can better understand the issues and reach personal as well as collective decisions about how they engage. And we have, as Amy also mentioned, the University's Sustainability Board. This is a very high-level board that I chair that brings together a variety of different stakeholders across the university to own and manage our sustainability policies. And it's a board that's very responsive to the community, so that when James Lee and Fern and Amy came to say, this is an issue, we need to know what the university position is and how the university intends to operate in this debate, we as a board said, okay, yeah, we understand the issue as you present it. Let's bring the issue into the board for a conversation. We had a very wide-ranging conversation at our first meeting that Amy and colleagues came to. We then said that this is really serious. It's not something a board in one short meeting can reach a view about. What we need to do is to establish a dedicated task and finish group to better understand what the university can do. And once we know that, to set in train a position where we enact what we think we can do. We brought together the Students' Union, researchers, academic staff, catering, facilities, purchasing, and other elements of the university infrastructure to brainstorm this issue over a series of meetings. They were very productive. The output of that was the university's palm oil statement, which you can see on screen. Now, we started with the view that our sustainability policy is essentially telling us that we need to minimize our impact on the environment and to use our teaching, research and other activities to work towards that minimization. So already as we started this process, it was very clear we had the policy permission to move to a very different set of thinking and action around palm oil. So the first thing we said was, okay, within that frame that we can operate within, we recognize the destruction of biodiversity is one of the most critical issues. That was non-negotiable. No one is going to doubt the impact on biodiversity of palm oil plantations. We recognize also that it's the unsustainable, poorly managed oil palm plantations that were the issue. And we also recognize the importance of palm oil as an economic development opportunity. So this was very clear. We had already the recognition that there needs to be a balance between the environmental, the social, and the economic. And within that, we had to find a way forward where we recognize that palm oil, and the important bit, its derivatives, are ubiquitous within foodstuffs, within cleaning products, within cosmetics, and with the entire supply chain that drives those products to the door of the university. And we just pause for a moment. The palm oil derivatives, ubiquitous probably doesn't actually capture it. If you look at the chemistry of palm oil, refining and onward production, there are many, many, many things that when they show up on a bottle or in a foodstuff, don't actually indicate palm oil origin, but actually are present. So we were thinking this is a really serious and large scale set of issues we need to work with. So how can we use the university's knowledge and capabilities? Well, firstly, it's about building understanding and awareness. So we have committed to working with the Students' Union, with our employees and partners, and the wider society to share awareness of the issues associated with sustainable and unsustainable palm oil production. And so the Student Union is one of those key partners, and we're delighted that they brought that issue so forcefully to our attention. But we recognise our purchasing power and our relationships with other institutions and with other bodies in Bristol and beyond gives us an opportunity to drive change where we can. And what we want to do is to promote and enhance the use of sustainable palm oil. Now, we recognise the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil provides the most authoritative information on the sustainability at this point. But we also say, if there comes a better source, a more authoritative set of information, well, we will look at that as well. What we want to do is to make sure that we work with our partners to ensure sector purchasing consortia are adopting the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil certification processes. We want to work with the National Union of Students. We want to use the EAUC and its good offices to help raise awareness and drive business change in the sector. We're going to take a lead insofar as we're able, that we have stated that by 2020, wherever it is possible, all the products the university purchases will be RSPO certified. And we're going to review this policy statement annually at a sustainability board meeting, and we will have interim meetings. In fact, later this week, we'll hold the first of our interim meetings to review where exactly have we got with our intention to drive business change by 2020. We already have a lot of RSPO certified purchases, but it's driving that down into the deep recesses of the purchasing that the university makes. We are a huge purchasing organisation, like many, many other organisations. We're a £260 million a year turnover business. So there's lots that we've got to drill deep into. So our colleagues in catering, our colleagues in purchasing are critical to our engagement here. But it is going to be driven by student concern, by staff concern, and by the research, the world-leading expertise in research that exists in the Department of Applied Sciences. Putting that together, we've got a powerful driver for change, and we want to make sure that as a university, we're part of the story that moves us from unsustainable palm oil being the norm to sustainable palm oil, where enhanced biodiversity has arisen in those palm oil plantations that are principally, but not exclusively, in Southeast Asia. They're also in West Africa and growing in size there as well. So what we want to do is to make sure that the university uses its knowledge, its research, and its purchasing power to raise awareness and to drive change. So thank you for that. That's probably all I need to say. And back to you, Claire.
Great, thank you, James and Amy. Really useful and thought-provoking. Lots of information there that I certainly didn't know. Olivia Preston from King's College has just mentioned on the chat that something that we were made aware of as we were planning this webinar, there is an initiative from the zoos seem to be the places to go for this. So Chester Zoo about a year ago launched a campaign also kind of supporting the use of sustainable palm oil, and they've been working kind of across the city. They are wanting Chester to be the first sustainable palm oil city in the world, and so they're setting themselves good big targets. So that's Chester Zoo. I know that the Chester University and certainly their catering team in particular are working very closely with the zoo on reviewing their food and beverage products and looking at how they engage with their suppliers and kind of make sure that their palm oil, anything that contains palm oil is sustainable. So I will also, when I send out the presentations, send some information on that. They have quite a useful download which helps. It basically outlines kind of what questions to ask and how to assess what kind of what palm oil involvement is in the sector at the moment. So that's really useful, and I'll put that up. We have got a question from Sivi. Did you want me to ask that? I'm guessing you do. Just trying to find. Okay, so the question to you is, I think that sustainable palm oil is a good thing. However, there is still a preserved issue with the sustainable oil certification. There are companies which have the certification which have been reported as not complying with the criteria for palm oil sustainability. Does that issue have to be resolved to make sure that the certification is fit for purpose and not allowing non-sustainable oil to enter the chain and become certified?
Yep. So just to kind of as a side comment from that, like the RSPO certification, it's definitely not perfect. They do have a lot of room for improvement. However, at the moment, about only 19% of all palm oil that's produced is certified. So it needs massive investment, really. And I feel it's very important that we work with and create demand for this sustainable palm oil to ensure that the criteria is sort of implemented properly. And also further to that, with organisations that are not compliant with the criteria that have previously been approved, they can be excluded from the organisation if they don't comply. I hope that answers your question.
And if I could just add to that, any certification scheme needs to have a robust inspection regime and an enforcement of penalties where the scheme has been, the oil has been found to be non-sustainable. So it's those two bits that need further work. This is a start. I mean, it's not that old as a Roundtable. It's still building its processes. It is the best thing that is there at the moment. That by no means is it perfect, but it can become better. And certainly the most recent report I read from RSPO has a lot of very positive words about their intention to become stricter as time moves on. Unfortunately, humans have a very good habit of trying to break rules, and when money is involved, people will do everything they can to make more money by breaking rules. They have to be caught, they have to be fined and excluded from trade agreements if they do that. We've got a long way to go to get to that position. We've got to start somewhere, and that's here. You're muted, Claire.
Sorry. Could I just ask you to stop sharing your screen quickly so we can see you a bit better? David Wheatley from the University of Liverpool has asked, what are the sources of info on RSPO certified products?
So there's a scorecard that the WWF have produced to kind of rate companies in terms of their sustainable palm oil, and that's a really, really useful resource. It was produced, I believe, in, gonna say 2011, so it may be slightly out of date now, but it's a really good sort of starting point, if you like, for companies. Also as well, if you're looking for a specific company, a lot of them do have like a page where they'll sort of give you their statement on palm oil. The RSPO website as well, I mentioned with the criteria, they have to have their publicly available management documents. You can find all of those on the RSPO website if you're looking for a specific company. So that's where I'd start to sort of find a bit more information.
Depending on what the product is, if you know the chain of custody of the product, you can find whether that is at the seed end or whether it's in the food manufacturing or beverage manufacturing end. If you go to those individual companies, you will find their policy positions. As we started this work, we spent a huge amount of time looking at company websites to identify what their positions were and what they said about certification or unsustainable palm oil in their supply chains. There's an enormous amount of information out there. It hasn't been brought together in probably a single comprehensive location, but maybe that can come through RSPO in the future.
Okay. I've had another question here from Marco Ellis at the LSE. It's a comment, I think. One crucial bit of information about palm oil that seems to be low-key in the UK, but has received much publicity in other EU countries. It is linked to the spread of cancer. Therefore, there is a need to minimise use from an individual as well as a global level. I don't know if you've got any information on that.
No is the simple answer. I haven't seen any testing information that would indicate that IARC, the International Agency on Cancer Research, has given a statement on this. I'll look that up. Interesting observation.
I would say further to that, a lot of the products that palm oil is used in, it's in a lot of processed foods, which obviously aren't going to be particularly good for you anyway. You know, if you make the switch to using more kind of whole foods and like make food from scratch, you can sort of reduce your palm oil intake. However, other vegetable oils, no vegetable oil is really good for you, to be honest. And so if we're going to use a vegetable oil, it may as well be one that's so high yielding.
Okay. Michael Morley from Oxford Brookes. Oxford Brookes have completed a study investigating the use of palm oil across our catering outlets. Good to know. This research is being led by Rory Padfield. Part of the work has been to develop a new bespoke scorecard method to assess the suitability of companies sourcing palm oil, looking at the different systems. Is it possible to set up something perhaps to discuss this further with UWE?
Well, welcome to come down and have a conversation. That would be great.
Okay, brilliant. Eve Nelson from the University College of London. How does green palm oil compare to RSPO?
So I didn't go too much into detail about this in my presentation because I didn't want to sound a bit confusing.
Can you speak up a bit there?
Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's better.
So there are actually 4 different types of sustainable palm oil, and green palm is the main focus of something called mass balance. Now this is a scheme where it's kind of like the lowest grade, if you like, of sustainable palm oil, whereby a company that is striving to use sustainable palm oil will buy just kind of normal palm oil and certified palm oil, but will pay a premium to growers that are producing sustainable palm oil, so they get that money, but they're sort of supporting them indirectly. So in the actual product itself, there won't be sustainable palm oil, but they'll be supporting sustainable palm oil in another way, if that makes sense. So the highest grade of sustainable palm oil that you can get is identity segregated, which means that the sustainable palm oil has been separated from all uncertified palm oil for the entire supply chain, and that would be the kind of Cloud9 sort of aim, really, gold star standard. But mass balance is it's a stepping stone, if you like, to get within that.
Great. Sivi, who I think is from Kingston, so questions are coming in quick and fast now. I think we need to also create a demand for clearer labelling in non-food products, where the sustainable / unsustainable palm oil labelling is hidden behind scientific names for products.
Yeah, we would certainly agree. As we drilled into the issue, it became apparent that palm oil is so ubiquitous, and it was in cosmetics and cleaning products. That was, I suppose, when we think about it deeply, it isn't that surprising, but the extent to which it has permeated those product lines, the diversity of product lines, that was surprising.
And further to that as well, a piece of legislation was passed back in 2014. This concerned in the main food products, where palm oil on a food product had to be labelled as palm oil. So that's not to say that that couldn't potentially happen for cosmetics in the near future. Hopefully it will.
Okay, and another question from Sivi. In terms of the Bird's Nest Fern project, it sounds like a really useful idea in terms of increasing biodiversity in plantations, but could there be issues with increasing possible conflict with species such as orangutans and growers if these feature as locations to leave your young while you harvest fruit?
Very good question. So in terms of improving biodiversity, the poisonous tree ferns, they're also looking into using those as a method of biological control. So it will help contribute to criteria 4 and reduce the growers' need to use like pesticides and things like that. So it does have those implications. Within a palm oil plantation itself, to my knowledge, I would have to double check with my supervisor and get back to you. However, I don't think orangutans would purposefully go into palm oil plantations just because a fern was there. This is just kind of the start of trying to build up those sort of food webs, if you like, within the palm oil plantations. So there would need to be sort of other species incorporated as well.
Okay. I've got another one from Alexis Heron, who is in Edinburgh. What is UWE's view on the RSPO credits? Just going back to that. If a product was covered by credits, would it be considered compliant with your policy?
I think we're going to try and take a very purist view, but I think the practicalities we're going to confront in the future. I think I have to report back on the reality of how we can engage. We haven't got to a position where we've had to confront that question yet, but we're not so far away. We'll let you know. I haven't got a view at this point.
Okay. Michelle has just added that the Brooks study found 83% of the palm oil found was hidden inside another ingredient, which obviously makes it a whole lot more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds about consistent with other things I have seen. And this is this nature of ubiquity, that palm oil is refined, converted, added, changed. The chemical name that is the resultant outcome bears no relationship whatsoever to palm oil. It is very, very, very confusing and difficult to trace the origin of the product. It's going to be a challenge. We have set what we think is a really ambitious position for the university. And the challenges we have in meeting that challenge are really very large. We aim to meet that challenge, but equally we could fail miserably, but we're going to try and fail if we do.
I would say further to that as well, the initial process will be, like, in terms of auditing, it will be quite difficult, but once that has been done by one higher education institution, it will then be much easier for that institution to kind of pave the way for others to get involved. So in terms of Bristol Zoo, they've currently been helping We the Curious, which is a local sort of science museum in Bristol, to kind of audit their supply chain. And the first time you do it, it's always going to be quite messy and quite difficult. But once that has been done and that's been put in place, it is then much easier to sort of say what the steps are, like X, Y, Z, this is what you need to do.
Okay. I've got one more or a couple more. Katie from Sheffield, Hallam. Do you think the UK government national policy has a part to play in encouraging sustainable palm oil and holding the food industry accountable?
Yes, of course it does. However, government has shown itself to be somewhat remiss in holding organisations and sectors to account when it comes to environment and health matters. A government that is rather laissez-faire in its approach is not going to bring forward significant impediments to trade and business. It's a sad reflection on ideology, I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. They should, but don't.
I would say as well, so Malaysian and Indonesian governments, they know about this problem. They know that demand for sustainable palm oil is increasing by a ridiculous amount. Some places, they've said if you don't switch all your plantations within, say, 5 to 10 years, that they'll get shut down. So there's that massive demand, and that's from collective drive from consumers, because the EU is actually one of the largest importers of palm oil in the world, and Asia and India are also very high up, if not higher. So we do really have a big role to play as consumers, and further to what Jim said, I'm not sort of filled with confidence in terms of just waiting around for a government to implement a policy. I would rather create the demand as a consumer and encourage others to do the same.
Yeah, it needs to become the new norm, and there's a long way to go to get to that norm. And consumers are the only way at the moment in which that can happen. It would be so much easier if UK or EU legislative positions were adopted that mandated RSPO. Supply chains can be influenced dramatically by legislative engagement, but I don't see that happening without enormous public pressure.
On a separate note, sorry to go on a bit with this question, Michael Gove recently, on a totally different topic, has recently sort of stated a load of new legislation he'd like to put in place regarding single-use plastics, and that is as a result of massive public pressure to sort of basically force him to do that, as a result of things like Blue Planet 2 being ahead. So I do feel like we as consumers, we have the control and we have the power, and we kind of need to just push governments to buckle down, basically.
On that note, Candy from the NERC has said that government buying standards in this haven't been updated since 2015. She is aware that this update is now ongoing for a few committed individuals. She says that they would welcome support, I suspect.
Okay,
another quick one from from Michelle Morley, probably worth having a look actually at the Oxford Brook study. Michelle says that the Southeast Asian governments have little respect for the RSPO, and are looking to set up their own certification schemes. Do you have any opinion on that?
My starting position would always be, if you've got a certification scheme that is in existence, work with it to enhance it and make it tougher. It may be that those governments are taking a view that that's an impediment to trade and development, and having a different scheme that might be weaker or meet other political goals. I don't know the circumstance. I can only speculate that those might be the issues. I would much prefer them to see bolstering of RSPO and supporting their work. I mean, remember, this started with an interesting collaboration between Unilever, one of the world's major food and oil trading companies, and the WWF. Now, that's an interesting juxtapositioning back in the early part of 2000s. It's something that needs to be built on, not undermined.
Okay. Another quick one from Sarah Muller at Reading. You mentioned in your presentation that you're looking at labour standards at palm oil plantations. Is there a modern slavery implication?
Well, modern in its broadest sense, potentially. It's unlikely to be the case as the supply chain nears the UK and enters the UK space. I think it's unlikely at that end, but there may well be issues at the point of production. I don't know enough at this point. It's things that we have to scratch our heads and work out the issues. But we do recognise the importance of oil palm plantations for the economic development and the social welfare of communities in Southeast Asia. This is right at the heart of what sustainability means in practice. How do you balance out those social, economic and environmental tensions and find not just the least bad, but actually a really good solution to that conundrum? That will then be sustainable in the true sense.
I would say as well, with the RSPO certification specifically within criteria 5, I've mentioned that they sort of have workers' rights. They get a fair price for the product that they grow. They get access to education. So they are working very much so with the sort of locals to ensure that they're looked after, if you like.
Part of the challenge there, though, is that these plantations are owned by multinationals or indigenous businesses that are large in scale, it isn't very often the case that these are small-scale productions of single farmers or families. These are plantations in the historic sense of that word, that are large in scale and owned by multinational or large national enterprises. So there's some work that can be done there.
Great. We don't have too much time left, but I've had one more from Kate Murray in Edinburgh. Do any supermarkets use only RSPO palm oil in their own brand products?
So to my knowledge, Sainsbury's do, as do Waitrose and the Co-op. Yeah. Don't hold me to Co-op. And there's another one, Marks and Spencer's as well.
What about Iceland? Where have they got to?
Iceland, they just want to remove all palm oil from their own brand products. On the note of that though, they will be replacing a lot of their palm oil with butter and lard, and the animal agriculture industry is one of the single largest causes of deforestation in the world. So
comes back to balancing out these issues.
To my knowledge as well, I know Aldi, in terms of their food products only, I'm not sure about cosmetics in their own brands, that's all RSPO certified as well. But if you do have a look on any of their websites, they will have a page on palm oil.
There's quite a few people who've mentioned some good resources. I think it would be worth having a look, I guess, at the Oxford Brookes study. Obviously, the Chester University initiative is a good one to have a look at as well. I'll send out some information with the presentations on that. A couple of people have mentioned that Ethical Consumer have got articles on palm oil and consumers. Someone's also sent through a list of other names, so the document with a list of other names that palm oil derivatives are called. So that would be great. I think on the whole, we're pretty much there, unless you, Amy and Jim, have anything to add.
Could I just add one thing, which is Amy had a slide towards the end, which was called Taking the Pledge. And if everybody on this webinar could go back to their organisation, if you haven't already signed up for Amy's pledge, can you pressurise your institutions to join in? I think this is a fantastic initiative led by an undergraduate student. The passion and enthusiasm and commitment that has been shown to drive this issue forward. I mean, it needs institutions to respond for all sorts of reasons. But if we as institutions don't take that student enthusiasm seriously, we're doing a great disservice. So if for no other reason than recognising that enthusiasm and commitment, can you take it into your organisations and seek their support?
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, James and Amy. Really appreciate your time and all the effort that's going in. It looks like there's still a lot of work to be done. The presentation and recording, as well as the UWE statement, will go up this week on the Sustainability Exchange. As soon as that's done, I will send out an email. If you have any other questions that haven't been answered, if you wouldn't mind just popping them across to me. Amy has agreed, if they're kind of repeat questions, to do a frequently asked questions sheet, so that we can have that as a resource which we can upload as well. Also note that we will, if anybody has got any information on the Oxford Brookes study, grateful to have that. We can put that up as well as a resource. And we've had some offers to put you in touch with the government chaps who are working on this. So again, another contact. So I will facilitate that. Thank you everyone for coming, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your days.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you
everyone for listening. I hope you found it useful.
There's a lot of comments on here, just so you know. People have been very grateful and said good work. So well done on that.
Oh, thank you so much.
And thank you, Claire, for all of that organising behind the scenes. We know how much you have to do to get us to this point. So thank you very much.
Good. I'm glad we had such a good turnout. We'll be in touch soon.
Good.
Bye.
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 Leave meeting on the right.
Oh, wait. Do you want to have a look at the comments?
Oh, yeah. I've got lots.